part was fine, right? Like the course content and everything. The purpose of data warehouse and why do you use the data warehouse and what are different types of data warehouse available. Okay. So first, what is a data warehouse? So let's see a basic definition of the data warehouse according to Inmon, one of the inventor, or you can say the scientist of the data warehouse inventor. Okay. Data warehouse is a subject-oriented, integrated, non-volatile time-variant collection of data in support of management decisions. Okay, so it's a data warehouse. It's basically designed for management decisions. It's not designed for day-to-day transactional purpose. It is designed mainly for the business decisions. It's only the purpose of a data warehouse. So if you see simple definition, so data warehouse is a subject-oriented, integrated, non-volatile time-variant collection of data in support of management decisions. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can just ping me straight away in the chat. Okay, so that I will just stop it and clear off your doubts. And firstly, let's see the characteristics of data warehouse one after the other. Like first is integrated. So what is integration? Integration is nothing about like we are integrating the data from multiple sources and loading that into the data warehouse. So that is like integration. So we are integrating the data from different sources. That can be a flat file data, that can be an XML file data, that can be database file data, that database can be SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, any kind of data. So integrating the data from multiple sources and loading the data into data warehouse. Okay, so that's the process, like complete process, ETL. ETL stands for extracting the data, transforming the data, and loading the data. Okay, so that forms full form of ETL. Okay, so I just take an example, like I do have a business where sales Hyderabad is one of the database, which is like SQL Server database, and one sales Chennai database, which is located in Chennai, and it's a Oracle database. Okay, now I just want to extract this data and load into a common database or common data warehouse by using some ETL tools. Okay, so the purpose of ETL tools is like the same thing. We will be extracting the data from different sources which are located from in different locations and load that into staging area. Staging area is nothing but an intermediate area within the Informatica. Okay, where we do some manipulations. See, we don't like there is no reason like you can just extract the data and load into the database. So we need to do some manipulations on the data. So we need to want to transform the data. So we need to do some manipulations that apply some logic on the data and load that into the data warehouse. So that's like integration, integrating the data from different sources of data and loading into the data warehouse. It's called as integration. Okay, and next characteristic is like non-volatile. Okay, so operational database and a data warehouse. So operational database is nothing but the database. Okay, in database, so we do all DML operations. Like we can insert the data, we can change the data, we can delete the data, we can replace the data. We can do all DML operations based on some business conditions. We can't even do any manipulations of the data without any business conditions. Okay, so this is an example, like we can do all DML operations on an operational database. Okay, so that is like once in the data warehouse data. So once the data is loaded into the data warehouse, it's only read. We can't do any operations or we can't do any changes on the data warehouse data. Okay, once it is loaded into the data warehouse, we'll be using only for generating the reports. Okay, here comes the reporting tools. Okay, so reporting tools are nothing like there are many reporting tools in the market, like Cognos is one of the best one. Okay, so here comes the reporting tool. They read the data from the data warehouse and generate the reports for the end user. Okay, so the reason for that is that the data in the data warehouse is a non-volatile data. We cannot change the data in the data warehouse. But all the manipulations we perform on the data, that should be performed before we load that into the data warehouse. Okay, is that clear? Okay, so next is like subject-oriented. Subject-oriented characteristics of a data warehouse is like, so we will be storing the data in the data warehouse, right? So we can't store like as you want, like we need to some it should be stored in a systematic format where the data can be reading of data should be very easy from the data warehouse. For that reason, the data will be stored in the form of data marts. Okay, what is the data mart? Is like a small piece of a database is called as the data mart, and all these put together data marts will form a big data warehouse. Okay, the data in the data warehouse is stored in the form of subject oriented. Subject oriented is nothing but, like, if you take some example of a banking sector. So sales data will be stored in sales data mart, HR data will be stored in HR data mart, accounts data will be stored in accounts data mart, loans data will be stored in loans data mart. Okay, so the data is split based on the availability of data. So if it's a sales data, it should be stored in sales data mart. So all these data marts, when we put together, it form a big data warehouse. Okay, that is the subject oriented. So we cannot store all these scatter the data and load wherever you want. It should be stored in a systematic format so that it makes data reading very easy and very fast. Okay, so that's the reason we store the data in the data warehouse in the form of subject oriented. Okay, so that is the third characteristics. And the last one is like time variant. So the major difference between the database and database lies here, like time variant. The data in the database is limitized, like what is the data which we store and database is very limited. Like it is like, it's not very limited compared to the data warehouse. If the space is limited in the database space is limited. Okay, we can store, like if you take an example, okay, mostly 60 to 90 days of data will be stored in the databases. Whereas in the data warehouse, the historical data will be stored, like most years of data will be stored in the data warehouse. That is the main reason for why the business people go for the data warehouse. If you want to store the years of data, so they will be designing a data warehouse. If you take an example of Walmart, it's been running for many years. So they want to maintain their business data in some place. So for that reason, they just maintain a huge data warehouse. Nowadays, like they are being migrating into Teradata data warehouse. Okay, so they are designing a big data warehouse for their business purpose. Okay, so that is data warehouse. So data warehouses are like designed mainly for storing the historical data of a business. Is that clear? The four characteristics of a data warehouse.
Yeah, Vinay, I have one question. Like, so there is something called, I heard, like star schema. They say like
yeah, yeah, we'll be doing that. Like, give me some time. Like star schemas and that will be discussed in the next slides.
Okay, fine.
Star schema, row schema, and everything will be discussed.
Because the way it is stored in normal database and the way it is stored in data warehouse, it is different, right? The schema and all, like.
Yeah, that is different. Like data in data warehouse, the data will be stored in form of schemas. Like star schema, surface schema. Mostly nowadays everybody is using like surface schema architecture for storing the data in the data warehouse.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Okay.
I'll be doing that in the next slide.
Sure, no problem. Yeah.
So till now it's clear, right?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay. So if you see the basic, one more definition or basic definition of a data warehouse. So data warehouse is also a database. It is nothing but a separate one. It is also a database, but it is a huge database. It is specifically designed for analyzing the business, but not for business transaction per se. Okay, so it is basically designed for business, analyzing the business and not for day-to-day transactional data. What is day-to-day transactional data? So whatever the transaction that happen on that particular day will not be stored in the data warehouse. That will be stored in the database. Okay, so that's the main reason for the creation of data warehouse. So data warehouses are designed for storing the historical data of a business, which is used for analyzing the business. Okay, so that is one more definition for a data warehouse. Okay, so let's explain this in the next slide. So if you see the architecture, this could be the basic architecture for a data warehouse.